All right, what's up? It's Dave, and we are rolling. So today we're going to talk about the Odyssey, Hamstead Odyssey. So people aren't really into boutique-y stuff. You may not be super familiar with Hamstead. Hamstead is a company. I'm not even sure where they're from, but you see they have on that pedal show. They often are playing Hamstead amps, and they're known for very high quality engineering, very very high quality amps and pedals, but they're not quite so well known. So here's a pedal. I think it goes for a little over $300 new. Seems like wow for an overdrive pedal. Although I have seen them as low as 200, which I would say once we look into this is a steal. If you look on Reverb for a used one, because they're not so well known as let's say the Browne amplification or something like that, who you can't even get used for less than what it is new. So let's just dig into these and just basically it is an overdrive pedal that could get you everything from a like clean boost to like a fuzz, everything in between with EQs. It's like almost like a studio tool, all in a little pedal. So here's a clean tone. Here's this is just the bridge pickup. These are Kinman pickups, by the way. This is the kick in the arse bridge pickup, which most of them I'm going to deal with gain tones, and I'll probably focus mostly on the bridge pickup. Here's the setting that I kind of like for like a higher gain. It's a nice rich harmonics. It's very even sounding. It's not harsh. Compare that just for comparison purposes to like a purple Plexi, which is phenomenal, mid to upper mid gain. So I mean, if those of you know the purple Plexi, it's one of my favorite gain pedals. It always winds it back on the board. It just works. It's got a nice bottom, low end girth. Never harsh on the top. So it gets you in a similar ballpark. So I can totally gig with this, just at that setting. This is the setting that I kind of dialed in the most, because there's all these buttons and switches, and right now I have the EQ to PQ, which is post EQ, which means the EQ is after everything. So it's almost, and it feels almost like you're EQing. Like a studio EQ after in a mix. Very, very smooth. Your tone is kind of mid, so if I wanted to get a little more mid bite, crank it all the way up. More bottom. Wow. That's a lot of bottom. You need that much, but even though it's so much, it's still not kind of like overwhelming. Your treble, I try to keep the treble low. Crank the treble up. Yeah, that's kind of harsh. Yeah. Treble in the middle. It's still a little harsh. And this I tried to set the tone a little up, give it a little bit of bite on the mid, the bass a little up, just give it a fullness. Back the treble off. On this particular guitar, I'm using a Tone King Imperial amp. I think it's one setting into the attenuator on the back. C1. X2. So you can have X2, X1, and X5. X5, basically it just takes your pickup input and pushes it into the overdrive. It's almost similar to if you put maybe a boost in front of the drive to give it a little push from the front end, which is different than turning up the gain. It's just a different sound. So I like the 2 because it gives it a little bit of a push, almost like, having a boost in front of it, which I like. Sometimes like you could take a mid gain and push it put a boost in front of it and push it, gets into high gain, and that sounds better a lot of times than just turning up the gain on the boost itself. Give you that kind of effect. You turn up the 5, You definitely, you could hear it sounds almost like a cranked amp. I did a couple of live streams of it, and I played it back. I think I had it on too. But you take mix it, blend it with, stack it with other overdrives. It started sounding like an amp. It started breaking up in like an amp. It was like, oh, when the amp starts overdriving, which is pretty cool. So if you're like at a low volume gig, you have to just use a little combo amp and you're micing it. You can almost fake it out and sound like, wow, that sounds like an amp that's cranked. Very flexible. And you could just do one time if you just want a normal. I settled in the middle, now, C1, C2, C3 are just different types of clipping. I kind of like, I don't know, they have different sounds. It's like C1 is kind of like a full nice sound. C2 is much louder, so let's pull up the bottom. Less gain, but it still has a nice breakup, more like an AC/DC kind of. Maybe push up the gain on stuff like that. Pull back the volume. Sometimes when you're doing single notes up here, it sounded a little thin to me. I thought it felt a little thicker on the C1 setting with the post EQ. There's some settings where that just those high note, it had a nice bite, but then up high it kind of didn't sound as those high notes can't be too needly, That sounds a little thin to me. And C3. Let's get a little more mids, I think. It's a little fuller on the bottom, and that's why I like the C1, because when you on the C1, I'd say it's all a little less clarity, a little less mid bite, but on the top, it's a little fuller sound on the high notes. So that's why the C1 is where I landed, where I started using it. The EQs, you got this post EQ, which is very nice. The middle one kind of, I think, takes it out of the circuit. Mess with that too much. And then the pre-EQ, which affects the EQ before it goes into the overdrive. It's a little more of a raw sound. I think post EQ, it's a little more, smoother, a little. So if you want to get, compared to post. And I went back and forth, depending on what you're going for in any given, but they all sound good. That's why this is my favorite setting, the C2, and that. Although the pre-EQ, a little more open on top, depending on what amp and what pickups you're using. If I was using like a, 335 or something a little thicker, or neck pickup more, maybe I would go with the, the C3 or something. But anyway. Really depends on your mood, and also what the amp is cranked. Right now, this amp is right behind me, and it's not that loud. So, and it still sounds kind of like amp-ish. I hate to use the cliche amp-like, but it does a very nice job of that, even at a low volume. And sometimes I do a lot of little restaurant gigs and stuff where I'm using like a Little Blues Junior or something, But I've used, I do ZZ Top and Jimi Hendrix and maybe Van Halen or something, and you need to do a high gain sound that doesn't sound like crap through a little amp and a low volume, and that's tricky to do. Digital modelers don't quite do that right. You want to maintain some dynamics. It's got a, it sounds to me like amp-like. Just compare it to like a Plexi, purple Plexi. Turn into the volume. Also a great sounding pedal. But the purple Plexi has that one sound. And if you throw the boost on, it gives it a little more oomph. This is a great sounding pedal, man. Compared to the Hamstead. Now, Hamstead doesn't have a boost. But we push the gain a little bit. Get more compression. Go back to. Back to bass, pull up, push up some mids a little. Really flexible. Let's try that with pre-EQ. Post-EQ. See how flexible it is, though. You could almost like compare. Like for a while, I was comparing it back and forth with the purple Plexi, and at first it sounded nothing like it. And then I got it closer to the sound with adding some bass and changing the clipping. You hear that compression and everything that and it's like it's almost an amp-like compression. So let's just listen. Let's check out the dynamics of it. It's definitely compressed, but you still, if I hit harder or softer, you still feel. So let's put something on top of it, like the protein, the green side, just to get, just watch the meters that I don't get too loud. Right up to the purple. The thing with the purple Plexi, you can't really dial in too much. It's just one tone knob. That's the only thing it always has a really good bass tone, but sometimes it's like, I want more mids or a little whatever. But the boost on gives it a little more bottom end. But let's say, let's take it and just see how it stacks with the green, the other side of the protein, the blue one. The levels. let's put the Lightspeed on top. It's another thing you can stack things with. There's a heck ton of gain on that. I probably wouldn't stack two things that high gain together, so maybe more like that. Something like this. Lightspeed on top of it. Cool. Now, yeah, it's still probably more gain than I would normally use, but it sounds like the amp is cranked. It's right behind me. It's really not that loud. I mean, it's a little loud. My ears might be ringing later, but it's really not that loud. So, we got to the purple Plexi. Purple, a little more gain. This is like it's about as aggressive as it's gonna get. It's a fantastic sound. The Lightspeed on top of that guy. Falling out of my hand. But I wanted to put those two things together so you could hear like the note clarity. It's tricky when you're doing like faster little lead type lines. You want clarity, but you want it to have a fullness and a mid bite at the same time. Is it not to be fuzzy or muddy? But it's a balance. But I didn't put any. For just the heck of it, let's put a little delay on top. Here's Odyssey. Slap back. Try a little more of a delay. Something's going on. I think the delay pedal has the wrong power supply because it's getting weird. New problem. I'll fix that later. But anyway, I just rewired some of the things on the board. But anyway, yeah, that's weird. So what I would say on this Odyssey is, and I didn't really, just for the heck of it, let's go to the extreme. Like the high. The loud setting. And then for the C3. Sounds huge. And then C1. that's the 5 times. So it's kind of like it's kind of replicates, I guess, an amp that's really being pushed, which is kind of cool. So if you're at a low volume but you wanted to get the sound in a recording studio, like you're really pushing an amp, and I've had times when I kind of stack that with something else, and it's like, yeah, it's cool. You could do that, or you could do some anywhere in between. You could also do like cleanish boost. Let's see if I go. Here's like. Anyway, so it could do. I mean, that's like a nice clean boost. Like, let's try to like compare that to like a Lightspeed clean boost. Being used as a clean boost. Different sounding, but you could see basically my point is it can do a clean boost really nice. It could do mid gain, low gain, like slightly crunchy, to its crazy almost fuzz tones, and it does them all really well and kind of amp-like, and it has like a certain like a hi-fi kind of sound to it, but not in a bad way, because people like raunchy tones. You can make it sound raunchy. The question is, it could do a lot of things. It can do them well. So if you could, you're going to a session, you don't know what you're going to go into, and you can only bring one gain pedal, or you're traveling or something. You just need something. You don't ever know what your backline is going to be, and you don't know what things you could do. I mean, it could do a little bit of almost everything. It's not going to replicate exactly a TS9 or a Klon or whatever. But it could do the full gambit, and it's the only one that I've played that does all those things and all those things well. You have a thing like Plexi, which does like mid to upper mid gain, great, but as one sound. The Protein has its own thing. The Lightspeed is very dynamic, but the Lightspeed brings up high end and kind of low end in a certain way, which works for certain things, but other times it's maybe you want to dial it some more mids in or some highs out. You can't really quite do that besides the one control. So this is much more control. So it's great for that. As a kind of like just you never know what you're going to get into. You never know. You could take a small Blues Junior or a tone cleaner Fender amp and make it sound martially or high gain. So it's great for that. The question is, the only downside with button pedals that do a billion things and do them in this case, sometimes they're jack of all trades and do one or two things good and other things meh. This does. I just have to say, all those things it does well. Like I could see that as I could go out. I usually go with the purple Plexi for the gain, but I could totally go out with that and it would sound great. And it's a little more flexible. The question is, for the money, the problem is, for most people, including me, what I would probably do is dial in the one sound that I want, like upper, mid gain, or whatever that I'm going to use it for. It's great that you can use it for a clean boost, but at a gig, I can't use it for all of those things. If it had presets or something, that would be unbelievable. If this had presets, that would be like, what's the Strymon has like Riverdale or Riverside or something that's like and and Chase Bliss has some stuff that has presets. This could be compete with that, and for the because you can get all those sounds, and it'd be great to be able to like, dial in. But basically, let's be realistic. At a gig, in a studio session, that's different. But at a real gig, you're gonna have one sound that you use all night, unless you have the low gain set and the high gain set or something. And maybe in the middle of a set, you might say, I'm doing this heavy metal song, so I'll dial in the 5 times or something. But for the most part, you have all those sounds, but at a real gig, you're only going to be using the one that you dial it in for at that gig. And then, so is it worth that kind of money? Or you find the sound that you really like and then find another pedal that kind of dials in just that sound, not as flexible, but half the money or something. And that depends on what you like, I mean, these days the purple Plexi is actually pretty expensive because they're, I don't think they make them anymore, Lovepedal. I don't think Lovepedal's even Lovepedal anymore. But I'm sure there's other mid to high gain pedals that get a sound as good as this, but do just that, and maybe are less, flexible. But maybe if that's all you need, you're just looking for a high gain pedal. So that's where the catch-22 with something like this is. But the good thing is, Hamstead is not that well known, at least in the U.S. So I've seen these go on Reverb for like $200 used, which, considering that's a steal for all that it does and how it sounds. Because I think a Lightspeed new, and it does one thing. It does really well, but it does one thing. A Southland. There's a lot of pedals that are $200 new that aren't nearly as flexible as this. Proteins, or what are the proteins, like $300 new? Purple Plexis, you never know. I've seen the single side of the purple Plexi go for as low as 150, and I probably should have picked one up because sometimes I don't really need the boost and it takes up a lot of space in the board. But that's the catch-22. But it is a phenomenal sounding pedal. You're not going to get it and be like, I can't get a good sound out of it. It's got killer sounds and it could do so much. It's just a matter of, I've been tempted to buy one just to have one because it doesn't take up a lot of space and I can use it for whatever I need, and I need, but I don't know. I can also, this setup here works really well. I like I only own the purple Plexi. This is a loaner from Pedal Genie. So if it was the other way around and this was a loaner and I owned this, I probably wouldn't buy the other one because they both do a great job, and there's not one that like blows me away either way. For what I need one sound. And purple Plexi is a great high gain sound for me. I have other high gain pedals, but I definitely consider that as for mid gain, high gain, whatever. So it's a killer pedal. And I'll listen back to the demo, and I might, who knows, I mean, there's certain things about this that when I give this back, I'll miss some of the the ways that you really, it's a killer pedal. It really is. They did a good job. The only thing is it's a shame that you can only use one sound at a time at a gig. But if you're a studio cat and you just need to have something in your gig bag and you never know what you need to be able to get high gain, low gain. You don't know what the backline's going to be. This is killer. You don't have to carry 10 different overdrives. Carry this, and there's no way you're not going to be able to get a good quality sound, from it. That's whether it's clean boost for country or fuzz or for whatever. Really well made pedal. Again, but I'm not sure if it's for having all those features, it's tricky with an overdrive because it's not like with a lot of these pedals, even with the UA pedals, it has a lot of sounds, but it only has one preset, which is like, so I can only use one sound or two sounds at a gig, but it does 50 great sounds. What's the point? I don't know. I don't know about most people, but maybe they're home just fiddling and just trying to get cool sounds. But I have to actually gig with this live with bands, so I need a sound that I can recall. I don't need fancy MIDI or anything, but if there's 4 good sounds in this that are usable at the gig, I can only use one if it doesn't have presets, which that would be a big deal because this is not a digital pedal. So to make this to have a digital brain, kind of like in the league of like Chase Bliss digital brain with an analog heart, or like the Jam pedals, which is a delay pedal that's all analog, but it has presets. So if they put that kind of preset technology in this would probably cost a lot more, but it would be fantastic. Because you could have all your drives, you could have a low gain, mid gain, high gain, adjust the levels and presets. I would really love to see that pedal. that could be if I owned that company, I'd be like, that's the next thing we gotta do. Put like a preset thing like this in there, and people would eat it up, I think, because you could, that's the tricky part with gain station for these types of gigs. Is like, well, you need a low gain for this song and a high gain for that song and a clean boost for that one. And of course, you use multiple pedals, but if you can get one pedal that does 2 or 3 gain levels at the flip of a switch, and then you have another boost after it or a TS9 for leads, that's great too. But anyway, yeah. And without spending like the Chase Bliss one with all the sliders on it, whatever, the Mark II, I think it is. I mean, how much is that? That's a lot of money. That's like, it's crazy money. And I don't like the idea of anything that has automated sliders, because you drop it once, or it's going to be a nightmare to fix if it ever breaks, and moving parts break. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Cool. Hamstead Odyssey, Dave Blair coming at you. I'll do some more. I was going to do a demo of like the Lightspeed and the Protein, but I haven't really. I want to use it some more at gigs and figure out whatever. It's on my board, and I've been just started gigging with them, so we'll see how it goes. Hasta la vista, baby.